She moved into a new apartment and asked her neighbor for salt. His guards grabbed her and locked her in a dark, soundproof room. Her neighbor turned out to be a Korean mafia boss. Her nightmare became a perfect life. But at what cost? Let's go back a week. Enjoy. Maya places the last cardboard box on the floor. The sound echoes through the empty rooms. She wipes her brow. The apartment she bought is completely unfinished. The old wallpaper is peeling off the walls, the floor creaks. But this is her space, her first real home. She looks at the pile of the boxes and feels a mixture of fatigue and relief. Finally, she can start over. She begins unpacking. An hour passes. Maya decides to take out the trash, rags of old wallpaper and dust. As she steps out into the entryway, she notices the neighboring door across the street. It's very different from the others. The door looks new, very sturdy, and perfectly clean. Two men stand next to it. They don't speak, just stand silently on either side of the door. Their faces are calm, but their eyes watch her carefully as she passes by toward the stairs. They seem wary, like guards. There's no threat in them, just complete readiness. Maya quickly goes back into her apartment. Strange neighbors, she thinks, but perhaps it's none of her business. By evening, Maya is hungry. She finds a saucepan and decides to make some simple pasta. She turns on the burner and puts on some water. Then she searches through the grocery boxes for salt. Yo rummages through the bags. Rice, pasta, a jar of sauce. There's no salt. She clearly remembers forgetting to buy it at the store. Maya sighs. Without salt, it will be impossible to eat. She looks at her food, then at the door. She doesn't want to go to the store. She thinks about the neighbors across the street. Maybe she should just ask for some? It's normal, people do that. She hesitates for a moment, remembering the serious men at that door. But it's just salt. What could go wrong? Maya steps out into the entryway. The light is dim. She approaches the next door. The men are currently away. She takes a deep breath and raps her knuckles on the sturdy wooden door. The knocking seems too loud in the quiet of the entryway. A few seconds pass. Maya is about to turn around and leave, assuming the neighbors aren't home. But then she hears the click of the interior lock. The massive door doesn't open all the way, just shoulder width. Standing in the doorway is one of the men she's seen before. His face is expressionless. He looks at her with an appraising, cold gaze. Excuse me, Maya begins, feeling suddenly awkward. I'm your new neighbor from the apartment across the street. I forgot to buy salt. Could I borrow some? The man doesn't answer. He looks at her, then quickly glances past her into the entryway. His eyes return to her again. He seems to be deciding something in his mind. Wait, he says briefly and quietly, addressing not her but someone inside the apartment. His voice is low and even. The door opens wider. Maya sees part of the hallway, spacious, with parquet floors, and a minimalist dark console. A second man, equally unperturbed, emerges from the depths of the apartment. The first gives him a barely perceptible nod. Suddenly, everything happens very quickly. The second man steps out into the entryway. His movements are precise and swift. In one smooth motion, he grabs Maya's arm above the elbow. His grip is as firm as steel. Maya doesn't even have time to process what's happening. Hey, what are you? She blurts out. The first man follows. He blocks her from the other side. His hand lands on her shoulder. They don't hurt her, but their power is absolute. Maya can't move. Quiet, says the man holding her hand. His voice doesn't rise, but it carries an unshakable command. They easily guide her forward, over the threshold, into the apartment. The door immediately closes behind them with a dull, quiet click. Maya tries to pull away, but it's useless. Her heart is pounding so hard she can hear it in her ears. Terror, cold and sharp, fills her. What are you doing? I just asked for salt! Her voice sounds high-pitched and frightened in the spacious, almost empty hallway. They don't listen to her. The men lead her down the hallway. They pass an open door into a large living room with a panoramic window. But Maya is turned in the opposite direction, down a narrow side corridor. One of the men opens an inconspicuous door. Beyond it lies complete darkness. Maya is led inside. The room is small, windowless. The air is still and cool. The only sound is the muffled hum of her own breathing. The walls seem to absorb any noise. When she takes a step, the sound of her footsteps is immediately silenced. They let her go. Maya instinctively steps back until her back hits the wall. She can't see anything. What's here? Why did you bring me here? She tries to speak firmly, but there's a tremor in her voice. The light in the hallway goes out. Now it's completely dark. Only the silhouette of one of the men is visible in the doorway. "Next time," his voice says from the darkness. It sounds cold and even, without malice, but without a shred of sympathy either. "You'll think twice before knocking on that door, understood?" Maya is silent, paralyzed by fear. She only nods in the darkness, realizing he can't see her anyway. "I said, do you understand?" The voice repeats the question, becoming a little firmer. "Yes," she breathes out. "Fine." The silhouette retreats. The door closes. Maya hears the quiet but distinct sound of a key turning in the lock from the outside. Now she's alone. In complete oppressive silence and darkness, she slowly slides down the wall to the floor, hugging her knees. Her thoughts are racing. What is this place? Who are these people? She just wanted salt. The absurdity of the situation doesn't make it any less terrifying. She closes her eyes, although it changes nothing, and tries to breathe deeply, but the air feels thick. She listens. No sound. Only the beating of her own heart. She doesn't know how much time has passed. Minutes? Hours? She only knows that never in her life has she felt so helpless and so stupid over such a small, mundane request. Time loses its meaning in the darkness. Maya no longer cries. She simply sits, her back pressed against the cold wall, staring into the blackness before her. She tries to think, to plan, but her brain refuses to work. All she can do is wait. Wait and listen to this deafening silence. Suddenly, a beam of light penetrates her. The door opens. The light from the hallway hurts her eyes, and Maya closes her eyes. A tall male silhouette is visible in the doorway. He steps inside, and the light dims again. But now the room is no longer dark. The man turns to the wall next to the door, his attention focused on something else. He doesn't even look into the room. Maya, blinded by the light, squints and can't make out his face. All she sees is his neatly coiffed dark hair and an expensive, perfectly tailored dark suit. He moves confidently, without fuss. He opens a small metal cabinet, almost invisible in the wall, which Maya hadn't noticed in the darkness. He takes out a folder of papers from there, and only now, as he closes the locker door, does he look up and notice her. He freezes. His face, calm and focused a moment ago, changes. His brows draw together slightly. His dark eyes fill with not understanding, but at first merely a question. He looks at her and the young woman sitting on the floor in the corner of his soundproofed room. Her eyes reflect pure, silent terror. He slowly turns his entire body toward her. He doesn't make any sudden movements, but there's a hint of tension in his posture now. "What is this?" he says. His voice is low, calm, but it lacks the icy detachment of his men. There's a cold, businesslike bewilderment here. "Who are you? And what are you doing here?" Maya opens her mouth, but at first, only a ragged sigh comes out. She tries to stand, but her legs feel like cotton wool. She braces herself with her hand against the wall. I'm your neighbor," she finally manages to say. Her voice is hoarse and barely audible. She takes a breath. "From the apartment across the street. I just moved in today." The man looks at her silently, his face a mask behind which his thoughts are working quickly. Maya tries to speak more clearly, but the words come out choppy. "I needed some salt to cook dinner. I knocked on your door to ask, and those men, they grabbed me and brought me here. They told me not to knock anymore." She says the last sentence, almost in a whisper, and her eyes again fill with moisture from humiliation and fear. And then the man's expression changes completely. Instant understanding. Not anger, not irritation. At first, something like sharp annoyance, a quick assessment of the situation. His gaze glides over her face, her simple house clothes, her trembling hands, incapable of causing harm. He sees not an intruder, not a spy, not a threat. He sees a frightened girl who asked for salt. His jaw clenches slightly. He looks away from her and turns sharply toward the door, his movements now filled with a quiet yet absolute authority. "Jong-ho!" His voice rings out in the small room, no longer a question, but a command. The door immediately swings open. One of the men who grabbed Maya appears on the threshold. He stands at attention, his face attentive and blank. "Boss? What is this?" Taehyung makes a short gesture towards Maya. His tone is icy. "Explain. Quickly!" The guard glances quickly at Maya, then looks ahead again. "She was knocking on the door. We carried out standard isolation procedures for unidentified persons. We didn't know..." Taehyung interrupts. His words fall like stones. "Salt, Junho. She's the new neighbor. You locked the neighbor in the pantry who asked for salt." For the first time, a crack appears on the guard's face. A slight, almost invisible hesitation. We had to ensure security. Taehyung looks at him for a few seconds. The silence weighs more heavily than any words. Then he turns away, as if from something insignificant. This is a failure. Rude and stupid. Let her out. Now, he says quietly, but in such a way that his words leave no room for argument. And take her to the living room. Politely. Understood? Understood, boss, the guard immediately replies. He steps into the room, but no longer with the same steely confidence. His movements are now cautious. Taehyung looks back at Maya, who's still pressed against the wall, watching the scene with wide eyes. His gaze is different now. There's still a stern sternness there, but something else has emerged. A confused, almost awkward determination to make things right. He doesn't apologize to her out loud. Not now, but he's made it clear there was a mistake, and he's fixing it. Jung-ho gestures for Maya to leave the room. His movements are now formal and polite, but there's no warmth in them. Maya, still trembling, walks past him into the hallway. The light here seems too bright. She walks, almost numb, and returns to the spacious hallway. She stops in the middle of the room, unsure what to do next. Her hands instinctively wrap around her shoulders. Taehyung follows. He pauses for a second, giving Junho a quiet, short order that Maya doesn't catch. The guard nods and disappears into the depths of the apartment, leaving them alone. Silence falls. It's thick and awkward. Maya stands, staring at the floor, at the perfectly polished parquet. She hears Taehyung approaching, but doesn't look at him. Her thoughts are jumbled. She wants to go home, through her own door, but her body feels frozen. Taehyung stops 2 steps away from her. He doesn't try to come closer. He folds his hands behind his back. His posture is more businesslike than threatening. My name is Kim Taehyung, he says finally. His voice is still even, but now there's a hint of softening in it. I own this apartment. Maya slowly looks up at him. In the bright light, she sees him more clearly. He's about 30. His features are clear, composed. He doesn't look angry. He looks like a man solving a complex problem. Maya, she introduces herself quietly. Maya Jones. Maya, he repeats, nodding. He pauses briefly, as if choosing his words. What happened was an unacceptable mistake. My people were overzealous. They shouldn't have treated you like that. I apologize. He says it directly, without unnecessary emotion, as a statement of fact. The apology sounds sincere, but also formal. Maya nods silently. She doesn't know what to say. It's okay would be a lie. It was scary. Taehyung watches her. He sees how tense she still is, how her eyes dart to the door. He understands that a simple apology isn't enough. This isn't a business failure. It's a personal, stupid oversight that affected an innocent person. And that person is now standing in his hallway, terrified to the core. I understand that an apology can't erase what happened, he continues, his voice a little quieter, but not softer. There's determination in it. So I want to make it right. Name any compensation, anything I can do for you. I will do it. He says this with complete seriousness. There's no playfulness or exaggeration in his gaze. He looks at her, expecting an answer, as if she could ask for anything, from a new car to him firing those security guards. For him, this isn't a gesture of politeness. It's a duty. Maya freezes. His offer hangs in the air, too grandiose to comprehend immediately. Anything. The words swirl in her head, mingling with the remnants of fear and the absurdity of the whole situation. She doesn't want money. The thought of money seems dirty after all this. She needs something else, something that will give her back a sense of control, the security of her own home. Her gaze involuntarily glides past him, across the hallway, toward the door, beyond which lies her own squalid apartment with peeling wallpaper, and the words escape her before she has time to think them through, dictated by fatigue, stress, and a stupid, childish resentment. Okay, she breathes out. Then, do some renovations. In my apartment. She says this, and immediately feels her face burn. It sounds so petty, so stupid. After everything she's been through, she's asking for plaster and paint. She expects to see amusement, irritation, or at best, bewilderment on his face. She braces herself for his indignation. Are you serious? Over something so trivial? But Taehyung doesn't wince. He doesn't even look surprised. He tilts his head slightly, as if considering her request from a practical standpoint. His gaze becomes appraising, but not judgmental. Repairs, he repeats, just to clarify. Yes, Maya nods. already regretting her words, but it's too late to back out. Everything's old, the wallpaper is peeling. I just bought it and… Yes, renovating. Taehyung looks at her for a few more seconds. Then his face relaxes for a moment, taking on an expression of light, almost invisible, businesslike satisfaction. The problem has a simple and clear solution. That's good. Okay, he says simply, in one word. It will be done. He says it as easily as if she were asking for a glass of water. No arguments, no questions about budget or scope. Just okay. For him, it's not a problem. Just a task that can be delegated to someone else. A trifle. Maya simply looks at him, incredulous at such simplicity. All the menacing aura, all the tension of the last hour, seems to dissolve in this ordinary agreement. He doesn't become indignant. For him, it's truly a trifle. The door to her apartment closes with a dull click. Maya leans her back against it and closes her eyes. The silence of her own, albeit wretched, space now seems the most precious thing in the world. She slowly sinks to the floor, hugging her knees. The adrenaline fades, leaving behind an emptiness and a slight tremor in her hands. She thinks about his words. Okay, it will be done. Simple and clear. But now, away from his direct gaze and the tense atmosphere of that apartment, doubts overwhelm her. Who is this man? What kind of people have soundproofed rooms and security guards who snatch their neighbors for salt? Would such a person undertake minor repairs? Perhaps he simply said this to get rid of her quickly. Or worse, is this some kind of strange game? Maya squeezes her eyes shut. No, he seemed sincere in his desire to make amends, but anything is just a figure of speech. Maya, in her pajamas, her eyes bleary, peers through the peephole. 3 men in clean, identical gray work clothes stand in the entryway. Behind them are neat stacks of materials, wrapped in plastic, drywall sheets, bags of mix, boxes. She opens the door, but not all the way. Good morning, says one of them, the eldest. He nods slightly. Miss Jones? We've been tasked with renovating your apartment. We're ready to begin whenever it's convenient for you. Maya steps back silently, letting them in. She can't believe her eyes. Workers are bringing in materials. They move quietly and efficiently. The foreman, whose name is Elle, briefly discusses the plan with her. What she'd like to change, what colors she prefers. He asks clear, to-the-point questions, offering options. Half an hour later, they begin work. Everything happens with dizzying speed. Furniture is carefully moved and covered with thick plastic. Old wallpaper is peeled off. The steady hum of a sander and the smell of dust and fresh primer can be heard. The workers don't chat, don't smoke in the entryway, and don't take breaks every half hour. It's like a well-oiled machine. Maya sits on her couch in the center of the room, wrapped in a blanket, and watches as her apartment is literally dismantled before her eyes, down to its concrete walls, and then begins to be reassembled. On the second day, late in the evening, Taehyung appears at the door. He doesn't knock, simply follows a worker carrying a box of tiles. He's wearing dark trousers and a simple dark shirt, no jacket. He pauses at the threshold and looks around. His gaze glides over the primed walls, along the new electrical wires running through the strobes. He nods to Elle, who immediately approaches him with a short, quiet report. Taehyung listens, occasionally asking monosyllabic questions. Deadline? Quality of materials? He doesn't look at Maya until the report is finished. Then his gaze finds hers. He bows his head slightly in greeting. Maya, caught off guard, simply responds. He slowly scans the room again, as if checking every corner, and then just as quietly leaves, saying goodbye to Elle. Continue. From that day on, he shows up regularly, about once every 2 days, always for a short time, always silently surveying the progress. Sometimes he lingers for a minute or two, watching a worker lay tiles in the bathroom or install a ceiling cornice. His presence doesn't bother the workers. They work just as meticulously. He simply observes. After his 3rd visit, when Maya happens to be next to him at the entrance to the kitchen, he addresses her for the first time since he gave his consent. Are you satisfied with everything? He asks, looking not at her, but at the worker carving out the perfect angle. Yes, says Maya, and it's true. Everything is very high quality. It's the minimum required standard, he replies, and there's no pride or modesty in his voice. It's just a fact. If something's not right, tell Elle. Nee, I'll tell you. A few days later, while checking the laid parquet, he asks, have you chosen the color for the walls in the bedroom? Light gray, Maya answers. Good choice, he remarks, and it sounds more like a professional assessment than a compliment. Won't be tiring. This is where the conversation ends. Work is in full swing. New double-glazed windows, smooth walls ready for painting, neat lighting installations. A week passes, then a week and a half. Maya gets used to the noise, the presence of strangers, the polite but taciturn workers, and to his brief, business-like visits. And then the day comes when Elle comes to her and says, "Everything is ready. All that's left is to clean up the construction dust. Tomorrow, you'll be able to use the apartment completely." The next morning, the workers come for the last time. They thoroughly clean, remove the protective film from the furniture, and take away the trash. Then they quietly leave, leaving the keys with Lee. Lee hands Maya all the keys, nods briefly, and says, "The work is complete. If you have any comments, please contact us." He hands her a plain white business card with a phone number, and so she remains alone. Maya slowly walks around her apartment. She doesn't recognize it. Previously, there were crooked walls and dark corners. Now, everything is smooth, with perfect right angles. The walls are painted a soft, warm gray that feels cozy, not cold. The floor is matte light wood parquet, comfortable underfoot. The kitchen has new cabinets and countertops, and the bathroom fixtures are modern and functional. This is a flawless, understated, modern space, and one that exudes a very high quality of craftsmanship. Everything she could have dreamed of, and more, but without her doing anything. The apartment is transformed beyond recognition. She sits down on her old sofa, which now feels out of place in this new environment, and simply looks around. She thinks of the dark room, of the fear, of his voice saying, "Okay." He kept his word. Not just kept it. He fulfilled it with such a sweeping efficiency that it makes her feel even more obligated and even more confused. Who is this man for whom her nightmare has turned into such a perfect reality? Maya has been living in her renovated apartment for 2 days. Every time she makes tea in her new kitchen or showers in her immaculate bathroom, she feels an uncomfortable weight of gratitude. This renovation isn't a gift. It's compensation for the horror she's endured. But the scale and quality of the work so far outweigh the situation that a sense of duty clings to her. She's obligated to respond somehow, to end this strange cycle with politeness. The thought of knocking on his door again makes her shudder, but inviting him over, that seems less threatening. She hesitates. On the third day, seeing through the peephole Taehyung leaving his apartment alone and heading for the elevator, she quickly opens the door. "Mr. Kim?" Her voice sounds a little louder than she intended. He stops and turns around, his expression neutral and attentive as always. "I'd like to invite you for tea, as a token of gratitude for the repairs," Maya says, choosing her words carefully. "If you have time, of course." Taehyung looks at her for a few seconds. He seems a little surprised. He doesn't answer right away, weighing the offer. "Okay," he finally says. "This evening after 7 will be convenient for me." "After 7. Great," Maya nods. At exactly 7:05 p.m., there's a soft knock. Maya opens the door. Taehyung is standing there. He brought nothing, no flowers, no sweets. He just showed up. "Come in," Maya says, letting him inside. He enters and glances around the room, not as a guest, but as a foreman accepting a job. Satisfied silence is the only assessment. Maya points him to the new sofa. He sits down, keeping his back perfectly straight. He doesn't lean against the backrest. Maya hurries to the kitchen to top up the kettle, which is already ready. She carries a tray with 2 porcelain cups, a simple teapot, and a small dish of cookies bought today. She pours tea. The silence in the room is loud. The sound of pouring liquid seems incredibly resonant. "Thank you," Taehyung says, accepting his cup. He doesn't rush to take a sip. "Do you like tea?" "It's just regular green tea," Maya says, aware of how stupid it sounds. "Yes, thank you," he replies. He takes a small sip. "Is the renovation entirely up to par?" "Yes, more than. Everything is wonderful." "This is good." The pause lengthens again. Maya takes a bite of her cookie, even though she doesn't want to eat it. Taehyung doesn't touch his food. "Have you lived in this house for a long time?" She tries to start some kind of conversation. "Several years," he answers laconically. "And well, you know." "Yes." He puts the cup on the table. The tea is almost untouched. "Are you busy with anything?" he asks politely, but the question sounds like part of a questionnaire. "I'm a graphic designer. I work remotely." He nods, as if making a mental note. No further questions. After 15 minutes, which feel like an hour, he looks at his wristwatch, simple but expensive. I have to go. I have a meeting, he says, standing up. His movements are still silent and precise. Thank you for the tea. Thank you for coming, Maya replies, standing up. He nods goodbye and leaves. The door closes. Maya looks at 2 full cups of tea and untouched cookies. The tea party had been conducted with strict formality. He had performed the social ritual of accepting her gratitude. Nothing more, nothing less. The awkwardness hadn't disappeared. It had simply changed form. Now it was a quiet, mutual awareness of each other's existence, separated by a perfectly finished renovation and 15 minutes of heavy silence. A few days later, Maya goes to a small supermarket 2 blocks from her home. She's shopping, lost in thought. At the checkout, as she places her bag on the conveyor belt, she notices a familiar profile at the checkout counter next to her, Taehyung. He's standing in line with a shopping cart. It contains a package of rice, a bottle of oil, and a few cans of beans. He's dressed in simple dark jeans and a gray turtleneck. He stares at the checkout screen, waiting for the elderly woman in front of him to check out. He looks ordinary. Not the domineering man from the apartment with the security guards. He looks like just a lonely man shopping. He notices her glance and nods slightly, his expression unchanged. Maya nods quickly in response and becomes absorbed in examining the yogurt container in her hand. When she looks again, he's already paid in cash, puts the groceries in a simple canvas bag, and walks out without looking back. This encounter, so mundane, confuses her even more. That evening, Maya returns from the gym. She's tired, her headphones in. The light in the entryway is dim. She approaches the elevator and presses the button. Hey, beauty, wait! A rough male voice sounds behind her. Maya turns around. 2 young men are walking toward her. They look tipsy. One of them, wearing a sports jacket, is smirking. An elevator, you say? We're going there too. It's more fun together, right? He says, moving too close. He smells of alcohol. Maya takes off her headphones. I don't know you. Now let's get acquainted, the second guy says, blocking her path to the stairs. They're not aggressive, but they're persistent, and clearly not going to back down. Maya feels a chill run down her spine. She clutches the key in her jacket pocket. Taehyung enters the building from the street. He's holding his car keys. He takes in the scene. Maya pressed against the wall by the elevator, and 2 guys standing too close to her. His expression doesn't change. He simply walks toward them, as if heading for the mailboxes. One of the boys turns around at the sound of footsteps. Seeing Taehyung, he snorts. Ciao, Grandpa, don't bother me. Taehyung stops a meter away from them. He doesn't look at Maya. His gaze glides over the young men's faces. He says nothing. He simply stands. His silence, his straight, unperturbed posture, his very appearance, pure, cold confidence, are more powerful than any words. The smirk on the first guy's face slowly fades. What are you staring at? The second one tries to say, but his voice no longer has the same impudence. Taehyung slowly shifts his gaze from one to the other, his face a stony mask. He takes 1 small step forward. That's enough. The guy in the jacket mutters, Okay, let's go. We're the only idiots here. They give Taehyung one last look, step back, and trying to take their time, head back out into the street. Taehyung watches them until the door closes. Then he turns to Maya. His face still expresses nothing special, just a slight concern, like that of a man who has chased away pesky dogs. Is everything okay? He asks in an even voice. Yes, Maya breathes out, feeling the trembling leave her. Thank you. He nods. The elevator just arrives. The doors open. After you, he says, letting her through. They ride upstairs in silence. He gets off at his own pace, nods briefly again, and goes to his door. After this incident, Maya begins to notice strange things. The next morning, when she goes out, she sees an elderly man sitting in the entryway with his dog. He's peacefully reading a newspaper on a bench. She'd seen him a couple of times before, but now he's there every day, at the same time. He never looks at her directly, but his presence is constant. One evening, she's walking home from the movies. A few dozen meters behind her on the nearly empty street is the same worker, L, who was supervising the renovations. He doesn't catch up with her or say hello. He simply follows the same route and then turns into the entrance next to her building. When she orders takeout, the delivery guy carefully looks at her face before handing over the order, checking not her name but, as if, with someone invisible. And one day, returning with heavy bags, she discovers that the heavy front door, usually tightly closed, is today just ajar, allowing her to enter comfortably without setting her bags down. It's not an intrusive guardianship. It's not obvious, but it's there, Someone is keeping an eye on her. Not everyone in the house, but her. And she understands where these quiet, barely noticeable signs of attention are coming from. This isn't an offer of friendship. It's something else. A formal but unwavering guarantee of safety, which he apparently felt compelled to provide after the incident in the entryway, as part of that same compensation. Hidden, but tangible protection. A week after the incident in the entryway, when Maya returns home, she notices a neat cardboard box with perforations at her door. It has no markings, only her name, handwritten in a clear hand. She carefully carries the box inside. Inside, nestled in soft paper shavings, sits a plant in a simple ceramic pot. It's not a flower. It has dark green, almost black, narrow, long leaves with a velvety surface, gathered into a tight rosette. It has a stark, almost graphic appearance. A small white card is attached to it. On it are 2 words. Sincerely, KT. Maya places the plant on the windowsill. She recognizes it. It's a black pearl haworthia, a rare and capricious succulent. She'd wanted one for a long time, but had been hesitant to buy it because of its high care requirements. This gift isn't like flowers. It's something living, something that requires care. And it's a clear sign of apology for that evening in the entryway, more personal than a renovation. The next day, while taking out the trash, she meets Taehyung in the hallway. He's just leaving the apartment. They nod at each other. Maya makes up her mind. Thank you for the plant. It's very beautiful. Haworthia, right? Taehyung stops. A slight, barely perceptible look of surprise crossing his face. Yes, black pearl. Do you know anything about plants? For the first time, his voice rang out not from polite interest, but from a genuine question. A few. I have a small collection of succulents at home, but this is the first time I've encountered such a rare specimen, says Maya. They're sensitive to overwatering, he notes, his tone becoming slightly less formal. You only need to water them when the soil is completely dry, and only from below, into the tray. I know. I have lithops and echeverias. They don't like a lot of water either. Taehyung looks at her, and his gaze changes. He no longer evaluates her as a source of problems or an object of compensation, but as someone who, perhaps, shares his interests. There's a good exhibit in the succulent greenhouse at the botanical garden, he says after a pause. They sometimes bring in interesting specimens. I've been there, Maya nods, but I haven't been to the new exhibition in a while. They don't speak anymore. He leaves, but the seeds of common interest are planted. A few days later, Maya decides to visit the botanical garden. She slowly walks through the greenhouse, examining the cacti and aloes. In the far corner, next to a display case of rare Madagascar succulents, she sees him. Taehyung stands, carefully studying a small plant with an oddly shaped stem. He's alone. He's wearing simple trousers and a dark t-shirt. He looks focused and calm. Maya hesitates, but then approaches. An interesting specimen, she says quietly, looking at the plant. He turns around. He doesn't look surprised or displeased when he sees her. He nods. Pachypodium lamare, young. See the rings on the trunk? Those are the marks left by old leaves. You can tell their age by them. They stand next to each other for a few minutes, silently examining the plants in the display case. Then, without a word, they begin to slowly move further down the room. Conversation arises spontaneously, abruptly, but naturally. He talks about the need for light, she about the difficulties with the substrate. Here, among the plantes, he is neither a boss nor a strange neighbor. He is simply someone who knows more about succulents than she does, and he conveys this knowledge in short, precise sentences. From that day on, they begin to occasionally run into each other in the garden. No one makes appointments, but sometimes on the same day of the week, they find themselves there at the same time. They stroll through the greenhouse, discussing plants. Their conversations never go beyond that. Not about work, not about life, not about what's happened, only about plants. One day, after one of these accidental strolls, they leave the garden together. He stops at the gate. Miss Jones, he says, his voice a little more serious, but not cold. I want to tell you something. Maya looks at him wary. What happened first? And then in the entryway, it created an unusual situation between us, he says slowly, choosing his words carefully. I don't want you to feel awkward or insecure. You're my neighbor. You're the person who understands plants. He pauses briefly, looking somewhere past her. If you ever need help again, not just salt, the corner of his mouth twitches slightly, but real help or advice, you can come to me. Consider this an offer of neighborly friendship. He says the last word with a slight awkwardness, as if it were unfamiliar to him. But he looks her straight in the eye, his gaze becoming clear and hard again. I would appreciate it if you didn't discuss this fact with anyone. And our conversations here. It's important to me. He's not asking, he's stating. It's a condition. His help, his budding, strange friendship, in exchange for complete discretion. It's the price for access to his attention. Maya understands. She nods. She senses no threat in his words, only clear boundaries. Okay, she says. I understand. And thank you. He responds with a slight nod. The offer has been made. The terms have been stated. Now it all depends on whether she'll ever be willing and able to take advantage of it. The weeks pass quietly. Maya works, tends to the plants, and occasionally sees Taehyung in the botanical garden. Their silent agreement seems to be working. She feels safe, but doesn't feel pressured. Everything changes on Saturday morning. There's a persistent, rude knock on the door. Maya, expecting a delivery, opens it without looking through the peephole. Standing there is David, her ex-boyfriend. He looks the same as he did 6 months ago when they broke up. A confident smile, a slightly wrinkled shirt. Surprise, he says, trying to peer past her into the apartment. I was in town and decided to visit my girl. I'm not your girl, David. And I wasn't expecting you, Maya replies coldly, trying to close the door. He braces his foot against the doorway. Hey, don't be like that. I just came by to say hi. Want to buy me a coffee? His tone is playful, but his eyes are stubborn. No, I need to work. Please go away. Oh, I'll just be 5 minutes. Show me how you've settled in here. I heard you bought an apartment. He easily pushes the door open and walks into the hallway, as if it were his right. Maya feels a familiar irritation mixed with helplessness. David was always like this. He couldn't take the word no. He paces the living room, examining the renovations, making comments. She asks him to leave. He ignores her. She says she'll call the police. He laughs, saying they're old friends, and he's not doing anything wrong. He just came in for a chat, but he doesn't leave. An hour passes. He settles down on the couch and turns on the TV without asking. Maya retreats to the bedroom and locks the door. She doesn't know what to do. The thought of calling the police seems overwhelming, but she can't stand him anymore. And then she remembers another offer of help. She doesn't call Taehyung. She simply leaves the bedroom, walks past a grinning David, goes out into the entryway, and knocks on the familiar door. This time, she knocks confidently. Jung-ho opens the door. He recognizes her and silently steps aside, letting her in. Taehyung is standing in the living room, talking on the phone. Upon seeing her, he immediately ends the call. I have a problem, Maya says bluntly, without preamble. I have an unwanted guest in my apartment, my ex. He doesn't want to leave. I don't know what to do. Taehyung listens, his expression unchanging. He nods once. I understand. Go back to your place. This will be resolved. His calm is infectious. Maya nods and leaves. She returns to her apartment. David is still sitting on the couch. Who are you visiting? He asks sarcastically. Maya doesn't answer. She goes into the kitchen and starts washing the dishes, ignoring him. 10 minutes pass. There's a knock on the door. Smooth and polite. Maya opens it. 2 men in dark business suits stand on the threshold. They're not Jung-ho, but they look just as serious and professional. Miss Jones? One of them says. His voice is quiet and polite. We're from building security. We've received information about an uninvited guest violating the rules of the house. We need to check it out. David jumps up from the couch. What nonsense! What security service? I'm a guest here. The men enter, not raising their voices. Sir, you are not registered as a guest, and, according to the hostess, you refuse to leave the premises at her request. This is considered a violation. You will need to come with us to provide an explanation. You have no right, David shouts, but his voice is already tinged with uncertainty. The men don't look like ordinary security guards. They exude absolute confidence and the legality of their actions. We have every right according to the condominium's bylaws, the second man says calmly. If you refuse, we'll be forced to call the city police and report you for trespassing. The choice is yours. David looks at Maya, then at these imperturbable people. His bravado melts. He mumbles something about excesses and calling a lawyer, but allows himself to be led to the door. A minute later, pale and angry, he leaves, accompanied by 2 men. They disappear with him into the elevator. David never comes back. He doesn't even send her angry messages, which is very strange for him. The problem disappeared quietly and completely, as if it had never existed. No yelling, no threats, no police visit, just an effective resolution to the inconvenience. The next day, Maya meets Taehyung in the entryway. He's carrying a folder of papers. "Thank you," she says simply. "You're welcome," he replies just as simply. "Things like that shouldn't get in the way of your life." They stand in silence. Maya realizes she should say something about boundaries. He helped, but it erased the distance again. "I appreciate your help," she says carefully, "but I don't want you to feel responsible or for this to become a rule." Taehyung looks at her. He seems to understand. "It's not a matter of responsibility," he says. "It's a matter of order. There should be no such disorder in my house, within my sight. Your peace is part of that order, nothing more." His explanation is strange, but honest. He's not helping her personally. He's eliminating the chaos around him, and she, as his neighbor, is caught up in this desire for order. "I understand," says Maya. "Okay," he nods. "Then everything's fine." From that moment on, their coexistence takes on a new, stable form. Maya gets used to her perfect apartment. She gets used to the fact that her ex no longer bothers her. She gets used to the fact that the entryway is always safe, and her black pearl haworthia grows strong and beautiful. She's getting used to her strange neighbor. They're not friends in the traditional sense. They don't visit each other, but sometimes they meet at the botanical garden and talk about new sprouts. Sometimes, passing by if her door is open, he'll notice a new plant on the windowsill and might say, "This one likes more light." And she'll reply, "I know, I'll move it." Sometimes she sees people arriving in impressive black cars, and they quickly disappear through his door. But it doesn't frighten her anymore. It's simply a part of his life, existing beyond the threshold. Her life has found an unexpected but solid foundation. She has a home she loves. She has security. And she has a strange, silent, yet utterly reliable neighbor with whom they share not words, but a quiet mutual respect and a shared love of rare, silent, and resilient plants. This is her new normal, and strangely enough, she feels at home in it.